All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the New Earth Leadership Summit, inspiring spiritual entrepreneurs like you to step into their personal power and become the leaders of New Earth. And today I'm super excited because with me, I have Adam Apollo. And let me this is an impressive resume. So I want to break it down for you so that everyone can see like how many sectors Adam's working in. Okay. So he's offered insights on global transitions, physics, technology, human spirituality, and the future as next generation leadership ambassador at the White House, in multiple NEXUS and other summits at the United Nations, and at conferences and festivals around the world. He is a co-founder of the UNIFY movement, which has reached over 100 million people, and two education and technology-based companies, Granted and Superluminal Systems. He is an active faculty member, author, and lead systems architect for several international online academies, including the Resonance Academy for Unified Physics and the Guardian Alliance Academy for Self-Mastery, with over 100,000 active students of all ages from all around the world across these schools. He's been featured on GAIA TV shows, Coast to Coast AM, and on multiple occasions, feature films, and more. In 2005, Adam made physical contact with an extraterrestrial Star Nation ambassador and began active and ongoing communications with galactic ambassadors from a vast array of different species supporting Earth. Adam Apollo is dedicated to achieving sustainable and thriving interplanetary culture. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Trish. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, so I always like to start by asking if you could give us the outline of the journey that your life has led you on to bring you to all of these different projects, which are clearly coming from your heart. So if you could kind of share the background story with us, I'm fascinated.
Yeah, well, I was a really curious little kid. I'll just put it that way to start. I loved BMX biking, adventuring. I grew up skiing from the time I was 2 years old. And I was the kind of kid in school where I'd often kind of make the teachers upset because I'd ask so many questions, and I'd ask the really, really hard questions, the ones that essentially the teacher would be flustered around and struggle around. And it only got worse as I got older, but I was somewhat depressed actually as a young teenager. I had a lot of social awkwardness. I went through a really powerful traumatic experience where I had been in India with my mom, who was connected to the spiritual center there because my grandparents had met this spiritual master avatar who literally like wiped leprosy off of people. His name is Meher Baba, or they called him Meher Baba. His name was Mirwan Shariar Irani. And I had this like crazy experience in India with all of these people singing these beautiful arati songs around this tomb, and being in India, which is just a vastly different place and culture than where I had grown up. And on my way back, I came back to where my dad was living. My parents divorced when I was 2 years old, and discovered that my stepmother, my dad's new wife, had just died in a car accident. And my stepbrother was driving the car, and he had just come back from Italy with his fiance that he had just met, her whole family, and she died in the car accident as well. And so I basically went into this period of my life where for the 6 months after that, it was like being in a dream, because I had hardly slept for the trip back from India. And then this is like, I'm having this experience in the hospital with my brother in a body cast, and my dad's like shattered, unlike anything I'd ever dreamed of or imagined or even seen in movies. And so I had to face reality in this extraordinarily hard way and powerful way. And I really started questioning everything at that point in my life. And by the way, I'm like 10 years old, and so, I I questioned my feelings, the falling in love that I'd experienced with this woman, which I'm a Pisces, so I was like 7 when I fell in love for the first time, and then had the experience where my dad ended up moving to the North Shore of Oahu in Hawaii, and my mom moved across the country to North Carolina. And when I went to Hawaii for the first time, my mom moved while I was there, and so then I lost all of my friends. And when I had driven across the country with my dad back to my mom's after this whole very intense experience, our car got broken into, and the only thing that got stolen out of the car was my bag of my stuff. And so I lost all of my clothes, all my physical objects that attached me to an identity, and then shortly after that, I lose all of my friends, everything that tethered me to some sense of who I am, And so I arrived in North Carolina to go to school, entering middle school, with this very sort of tender sense of like, who cares who I am? Like, who knows what does it matter what I tell people? What does it matter like who I am? And this ended up with me kind of basically, saying some things that weren't true, things that I hadn't experienced, just to see what would happen. And just telling new people that I had just met, essentially, and why, I don't know. It was kind of an experiment, and also because I just didn't really care at that time. And then I got really deeply, very viscerally in touch with the nature of truth and lies, and the actual visceral energetics of what it takes to carry around a lie. And the reality that you can't just drop it. It doesn't just go away. It's something that becomes a burden for you, that is a weight that you have to carry until eventually you release it, hopefully, because the pressure and the depth of the energetic of carrying that is more intense than you can bear. And so then eventually the truth snaps back into place, you deal with it. And there's often, liberation and a lot of things that happen in that process of actually dealing with the truth. And so with that sort of sense of learning and awareness, I ended up as a 15-year-old discovering my human energy body. And I did that through with a friend, and essentially discovered that I could create a field of charge between my fingertips, and I could see it in darker spaces, that there's this field of force around us. And a lot of people that have heard me in interviews know that story, but maybe don't know the pieces before that. And that was for me, the surfacing out of this sort of deep space of depression and questioning, and entering a space of exploration and discovery that would dominate the rest of my life, that essentially brought me so much more in touch with what is real and what is true and what is undeniable than anything else ever could. No teaching in school, no master, no book you could read can ever open your mind the same way as discovering the field of force that nobody ever taught you in school, that essentially, unless you have a really special family, you probably don't even believe that exists. You probably think it's from movies like The Force and Star Wars. And yet this field around us, this field that penetrates through us, that moves through the universe, it is the field through which all information is exchanged in the universe. And I mean all information. It is the structure of information. It's called space-time. That's what Einstein called it. But it's the mass energy that creates matter, that entangles us with other things. It allows quantum transmission, communication. It's responsive to consciousness and the force of will. And so immediately, as a high schooler, I suddenly went from the shy hacker kid who'd go home learning how to pick locks on the internet and learning how to turn on and off phone lines and, leverage 2600 frequency to, hack into 800 numbers and just playing with stuff, by myself, to I'm in touch with something that nobody else here is in touch with. And it seems like it is the most important thing for us to be in touch with. And so I became a leader because I had to actually show people something that they had never experienced before and ground them in that experience enough that they could actually see its magic and its benefits. And I can tell you the kinds of miracles I experienced even as a high school kid were crazy and massive. But that's really where it all started for me. And, obviously I've had a long journey since then, illustrated by my bio, by many things that aren't even on that. But it's all been really around this discovery of what and who we truly are, and what energy is, and what life force is, and how can we better know and understand the gifts that are inherent within us and that have been essentially kept from us, wiped out of our science and the history, and not present in our teaching and our school systems, primarily because of mainstream religions.
Yeah, I mean, so wow, that's a really powerful story, and it has echoes and resonance of like some of the, like, it reminds me of the Buddha story, right? A little bit about having to lose the ego, the sense of self, in order for the true self to emerge. And so to have that happen at such a young age for you, having all these experiences happen so quickly around you that destroy a sense of ego, but allow that space for the true self to emerge. And you talked about the resonance of truth and the weight of lies. And you're talking about this field that you've contacted and felt and know to be one of the greatest truths. And you talked about the force. And I feel like even though most people might not understand this field that you're speaking about, it resonates as true. For example, Star Wars being such a popular series for us because there's something in our core being that knows that energy, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can't escape from it. Everybody has experienced it. And that's the funny thing. I mean, in those days, I was going to massive dance parties in Atlanta and Charlotte as a high schooler, and sneaking into clubs essentially with my older friends. And I realized that half of the connection that was going on between people was subtly telepathic. People would be able to find each other and tune into where each other were. And they didn't really think much of it. It's just none of us had cell phones. It was before the age of cell phones. We couldn't ping each other or chat a text. You're in a party with 5,000 people. How do you coordinate with your homies besides like, I'll meet you at this time in this place? It was all synchronistic and all intuitive. And especially in things like breakdancing circles, you watch the guys, and we're down on, squatting, watching each other. And all it takes is a glance, and we know who's going next. We know where it's going to flow next. For people who have had children, as a mom, like you can feel what's going on with your kid or your cat. If you're, a pet person, you've had experiences where you've thought of someone and they called you on the phone. You've had experiences where you felt something going on and you didn't know what it was. And then you find out what it is an hour later. We all are tuned in to this sharing of information that's going on all the time through our entanglements, our connections. Quantum entanglement in this case is what I'm talking about, with other people and other things and other beings. But we don't have a sort of standardized language for dealing with that information. We haven't formalized it in any way that in modern Western sort of society, right? In the world that we generally live in day to day. And it's massively illustrated recently by things like COVID, because somehow out of, after literally, hundreds of years in the last 100 years, and then the last like 50 years, really the science of immunity coming forward, and the reality that the body's immune system is extraordinarily complex and powerful and can literally handle almost anything. but that there's this underlying thing to the immune system that we don't totally understand. And that underlying thing to the immune system has been talked about in Vedic studies for thousands of years, in Chinese medicine and preventative medicine systems of Taoist structures and other, Eastern traditions, is underlying even health perspectives of ancient cultures, like the ancient Celtic people and the Tuatha De Danann, which is my lineage. And that underlying thing that is health is about relationship. It's about how connected we are to ourselves, how much we're listening to the signals and messages moving through our meridians and our systems, how much we're attending to the balancing of our chakras, the levels of consciousness that we have at different layers. These are the commanders of health. It's not there. You're living, your body can actually engage with anything in the world and to stay healthy if you are in touch with this fundamental field of energy. So all of that just got real, because I've literally, since I was a teenager, I realized this, and I read Barbara Ann Brennan's work, Light Emerging and Hands of Light, two fantastic books every person in this space should have on their bookshelf. And she's a NASA astrophysicist, essentially talking about how her study of the human energy body led her to craft a school of natural healing. And it's all based on the subtle energetics, the subtle field. And that subtle field change, the subtle field healing, the vibrational healing of literally the geometric structure of space-time itself inside of your body, of course that changes the matter. And of course that changes, how your body's interacting with electricity and energy and bioorganisms that may be in your body and all of these things. And she healed, she has 20 years of documentation, 30 years actually, of cancer healing, bone repair, things that traditional modern science say is just not possible. But it absolutely is within the space of when we understand that everything arises from this field. And as all the spiritual traditions would tell us, everything arises from consciousness. Consciousness is the fundamental thing. And yet somehow we all get convinced again that there's this thing and it's going to get us and whatever. And, for me, I've literally, throughout the last 20 years, 25 years of my life, I have very, very rarely got sick, because as soon as I feel any kind of symptom, I use Barbara Ann Brennan's method, and I look at it as it's a message from my body that I need to attend to a certain area of my body that's either not receiving, or feeling or digesting the world. Like, it's a message.
Yeah.
Your body's communicating to you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so the force is a game changer for health, totally game changer. And I think it's really important that we start to recognize the power of our own body to heal ourselves. And, that message might be a little late landing with some people, and they might have had to go down harder paths of learning. But no matter what choices you have made, you can always restore your body to its highest condition and highest state. Might take some detoxing, might take a little cleansing, might take a little work, but you are the master of this vehicle. And that is something that I want to really emphasize to everyone.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that message. And, it reminds me, like when I listen to people talk who've had extraterrestrial contact, many, many times they say healing the body is very easy. It's like the first thing that the extraterrestrials share with us is like, if you guys only understood how easy it is to heal your body, you'd laugh.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's also talk about, since I've touched on that subject, let's talk about maybe some of the more advanced messages that might be coming through from our galactic family, right? So I know that you've had contact, and I know it's something that is it's a bigger conversation than we can have here. So can we first point towards, you said on Gaia you were on a couple shows, can you point towards those shows for people to get more context?
Yeah, if you have a subscription on Gaia, you can, or you go on Amazon Prime, you can find it that way too. You can just essentially search for interviews with ED, and ED stands for extra dimensionals. And it's the beautiful title that my friend Ruben Langdon created, as a context for essentially interviewing people that have had experiences beyond the normal, like that go way deeper than most people have experienced. And I did a, 5-6 hour long interview with him in Big Bear, after contacting the desert a couple years ago. And so we cut it down to about, 3 hours, I think, over 2 episodes, but it tells really the depth of my journey, to this experience of having direct physical contact with an extraterrestrial being from another world. And, as a scientist and a philosopher and someone who literally teaches physics and, who runs a tech company, I'm a CEO of a technology company. It's very important to me that people understand context and that people understand I'm not just, some dude who took some drugs and saw something, right? Like I had a series of experiences, a journey of experiences that fit together and made sense at a level that nothing else in my life has, like more profound series of events than anything anyone could even craft. I mean, to me, it's crazy because I look at movies and stuff and I'm just like, wow, my own journey is like a movie, and it's beautiful and it's easy to, jump on that and be kind of egoically attached to something like that. But for me, it's really pure and it's really my own personal life. And it's been hard at times to share parts of myself and parts of my life. And that's something that we all face, especially as we are learning how to step into leadership, which is essentially listening to the messages of the people around us, seeing what the challenges of our communities are, seeing what the challenges of our planet is, and learning that we have to actually step up. We have to speak our truth. We have to actually bring our knowledge. And I'd say that with the direction and the way that our planet's going, we really need some knowledge and some information from cultures that have already figured out how to steward their planet. Yes. In other words, how to actually come into balance with your planet and your biosphere. And so these experiences for me led me to really understanding what planetary leadership looks like. And also, the tall order that we have in front of us, which is essentially developing the planetary coordination and communication and stewardship at a cultural level that is gamified and exciting enough and big enough that everybody participates in it at some level. And that's not a simple challenge. We can't just roll into this next phase going, oh yeah, it's cool. The government, we'll vote in some people and they'll take care of it because they have all the money and the resources and the military and these people. No, that's actually not going to get us there. There's one thing that I learned right off the bat in my contact experience with this beautiful woman being from another star system. And it was that honoring the fact that we're all on this journey is critical. We are all important, and it doesn't matter. Some of us are ready for contact. Some of us are ready to open our minds and see starships and go to the next level. Some of us are not, but we are all part of this journey together. We're in a planetary community, which means everybody has some gift to bring to the table. Everybody has some knowledge to bring to the table. And we have to start to really see and understand that, to do peacemaking at the scale we need to do it, to do coordination at the scale we need to do it. Because you know what? You're always going to need a farmer to be farming and taking care of the land. You're always going to be needing, somebody who's just wants to like clean things and make things pristine, that's passionate about that and cares about that. You know, you're always going to need somebody who's just down to be in the engineering desk and sitting at that workstation and like figuring out all the little details of the pieces of the puzzle. Like we all have roles to play.
Yeah.
And it's our challenge right now is actually coordination of those roles at a planetary scale, and coordination of how we're actually driving our energy and our money and our intention to making things happen and changing the way we do things at scale.
So, and this is a big question, but how do we start coordinating? How do we start the coordination process?
Well, first, learning from each other and listening to each other. Like us having this interview right now, we are in service to that, because essentially we are speaking, we're providing an opportunity for people to get some new ideas and learn and open their mind to new possibilities. And that's a big step. But we're in the larger context of social systems in particular that are in many ways manipulating and controlling the way that we exchange information with each other. And that's a big problem, because it's not just about unethical business models, you know, which is a big deal too. Like, you know, Meta essentially taking your data from Facebook, selling it to other people, throttling, in other words, because their entire business model is based on sales of marketing, they can essentially just say, all right, you don't get any reach this month, and we'll just continue saying you'll get more reach if you pay us this money. And then once you pay them the money, they give you a little bit more reach, and then they throttle it back again. And it's like having a Wizard of Oz or a mafia guy. Imagine a guy in the mafia is the Wizard of Oz, and he's behind the curtain, and he's going like this, you know, trying to force you to get, you know, to do what he wants you to do so he can continue making money. And now, of course, entering really dangerous spaces like VR, which is intensely visceral, very strong effect on psychological consciousness. And we have to ask ourselves the question, you know, do we want a company that's essentially, you know, violated constitutional rights, raped our privacy, you know, sold our data to the highest bidder, some of which are, and also allowed the data distribution to companies that essentially use that data to politically manipulate us, like, and literally game the the structure of consciousness around different major world decisions and issues. And in other words, that's like manipulation for hire, right? Mm-hmm. So like that's militarized levels of mind control and manipulation. And we've had that proven to exist, right? And so we have a really clear mechanism for understanding how certain subgroups in our communities might get really confused about certain things, like, you know, the shape of the earth, for example. Like, but if you look at the militarization and the actual weaponization of mental manipulation, it starts to make sense, because you start to actually see that there have been divide and conquer campaigns going on in marketing for a long time. Now that marketing is actually structured towards our belief systems themselves, right? So I'm going a little dark here because I need people to understand that we are in a very volatile field right now because of the systems that we're operating in, because of our information sources, the ways that those are able to be centralized, controlled, and manipulated from behind the scenes. And what we are given is this beautiful opportunity of reflection to look at how much we have actually given our own power away through these systems. Yeah. Because the reality is that you probably do have a lot of the most important people in your lives' phone numbers, right? Like you don't actually need WhatsApp to communicate with them or actually do it on Instagram. And if you don't have that, or their email or other kinds of, forms of communication, you probably should. And there are solutions coming, and there's a fleet of awesome, Web3 decentralized projects doing all kinds of great work in this area. And one of the things that I'm directly working on is a project essentially designed to be your 3D dashboard, your dashboard to all of those different networks, so that you can pull in your Facebook and your Instagram data and your Twitter data. You can basically take back all the data balls that they're now required to give you by law, so that you have them on your own system, that you control them within your own field and your own account and your own identity that you own and control. Doesn't belong to them. They can't take it. They can't do anything with it. And you can build direct peer-to-peer connections with all of your friends, all of your families, all your networks, so that you own and control your network, your contacts. They belong to you. It's not another like, here, here's all of everybody I know, go market to them because I want you to make my job easier to add friends. Like the kinds of stuff that we do right now are built, are baked into these funnels within business models that have been established. And I'm not saying anything that you guys probably out there don't know. And if you're in the world of marketing, you know this really deeply, because we do it all the time, trying to get people on our mailing list or get people into the thing. Well, add $1 billion to the way that you do that, and you can see the level of complexity and skill and depth with which these companies do this kind of thing. So I believe that part of the next big step for us as a species is taking command over our communications with each other and our ability to coordinate and collaborate. If you've ever tried, as a really good illustration of this point, if you've ever tried searching for my friends in X location on Facebook, you'll find that it will bring up a little list of people that have listed living in that general area, right? But I mean, you can literally search for people that are in towns that are 5 miles away, and you won't get the people that are in that other town. You'll only get the people in this town, not in that one, if they're small towns or whatever, right? And there's no mapping system. Have you ever wondered why you can't map your friends around the world on Facebook? Kind of strange, right? Well, if you try searching for your friends in different locations over a certain amount of times, and the last major time I did this, I was actually making a list externally of really important people in my life in different areas. And I got to 5 searches. And then on the 6th search, they blocked me from the feature. I was not able to actually see my friends in those locations at all anymore. Like, it literally would not show me friends in a location at all. It would just show me a Facebook page for that location, and posts from around that location, but would not show me the list of my friends. And that was the most recent kind of grievous thing that I've experienced with Facebook. I've had many other horrible experiences in the past building UNIFY and addressing some of the major throttling issues and the manipulation issues. But this was like, wow, how diabolical is it that you as a company would literally stop people from even seeing or knowing who and where their friends are, so that they're forced to use your platform to stay in touch with them. Like, you can't even know where they are in person, even if they've shared it with you, right? Like, it's mind-blowing. Yeah. And yet that is what we're using as our primary communication method for sharing stuff with each other. Whoa. Like, yeah, that's wild.
That's just the tip of the iceberg, what you're talking about. Just think of all the stuff that we've shared willingly, and where is it going? Who's got it? What context is it being used? What I've heard, that there's digital profiles on each of us that they know us better than we know ourselves, which is a sobering thought.
It definitely is. It definitely is. I mean, if you considered if you had a list on your own system of everything you ever searched for, everything you tried to pull up on social media, you know, like a lot of your basic, you know, shares and communications, things that you've let out there. And you had a really, really nice machine learning, highly intense system that's going to organize that and float all the tags to the top and et cetera. Yeah, you would learn a lot about yourself, a whole lot.
Do you think we should have access to that, by the way? Do you think that that should be given back to us so we could see it?
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's part of the system that we're building, is we're creating a system that simply lets you store and understand locally even what it is that you're doing with your information, how you're tagging, how many times are you connecting with this person. That information doesn't belong to some third party or to some company or whatever. That belongs to you. That's your information. That's important to your understanding of your connection with people and the network. And so giving that back, I think, and people taking back the power over their data in those ways, that's a real game changer. That's a real way that we can actually lead transformation on this planet, is actually doing that. But I understand, because right now, most people don't have an alternative. Like, sure, you can leave Facebook to go and join Mastodon or, you know, Olio or whatever, and you're like in a worse interface. None of your friends are there. None of your previous stuff is there. Your data is there. And yeah, of course, you're not going to switch over, right? And some people have, you know, felt not good enough in little communities, you know, on mighty networks or whatever, that like you're in that community and it's really like-minded people and there's not so much noise. But I pretty much guarantee that most of those people also still have their Instagram and their Facebook account. Why? Because that's where the big network is, right? Mm-hmm. And so what we really are talking about in the trajectory here, and I'm using this as a microcosm of the bigger work that we're doing, is that we have to collectively, in a sense, campaign around, like we do with UNIFY, synchronize around shifting our energy, shifting our intention, shifting where we're going to be and how we're going to be there. And so one of the big things we have planned in the next couple of years is a massive campaign to people take their data back. Basically, everybody take their data back from all the big systems and transition that into their own personalized dashboard where they own and control everything themselves. Because that's like taking the power back, essentially. Yeah. And that kind of collective campaigning, we've done that for cleaning up rivers around the world. We've done that for planting trees around the world. We've done that for, you know, collectively meditating. We've done the biggest ones with meditation, just getting people to sit down, shut up, meditate, get into some peace with each other, right? Yeah. And so it's these collective synchronizations and momentum that we build when we're like with shared people doing a shared mission, that we need to start reorienting all of that, all those little dopamine hits that we get with our likes and our comments and all of that. Like, let's move that towards actually the feeling of oxytocin, of connection, of empowerment, of change making, of fulfillment of sacred purpose in the world. Like, these are the kinds of things that can help us actually feel like better people and feel more psychologically healthy on a daily basis. And all of that's possible when we start actually looking at how much energy we put out through the internet and through the web, and start looking at how could we be better coordinated, better connected, and do the things that we see need to be done on the planet in a way that we can actually play together, that we can support each other and do the work together.
I'm so excited that you're coming up with solutions for finding our digital sovereignty. That's a piece I hadn't even really thought about yet, is because for me, leadership is sovereignty, right? This sense of self-rulership. And I hadn't even considered yet that I could claim sovereignty back from that space. So I'm so excited that you're thinking about that and you're coming up with solutions, because I'm like, oh my God, that's a whole other piece that has to be in place in order for us to truly feel like this is my realm, right? I'm creating in this space. I have a question for you about that. So
sure.
A lot of people talk about the fact that when we get together, especially when we get together in person, they can really feel the field. In my own life, it's just happened that I've created more field online. And I just want to see, you seem to be a person who understands that. So I want to get your take on it, because I'm like, it's not that I don't want to be in person. Of course I do it. There is definitely palpable energy we feel in person. Sure. But I feel to say that it only can happen there is a limiting concept. Our consciousness knows no bounds. So I want to hand that over to you and just have you talk about, when you feel like you can't gather, are we losing effectiveness?
I mean, there's two sides to that. The answer really is yes and no. Okay. And I'll start with a little context building and, just ask your audience, have you ever cried watching a movie? If you've ever had an emotional experience watching a movie, or listening to a song that someone created, then you know very well the depth of emotional experience that can happen through media and through non-local connection. The person that wrote the song that made you cry, they wrote that in, probably years ago, and in this moment where they were going through an experience, and they transmitted it into the music and they brought it into the song. And now years later, time later, whatever it is, you listen to this song, that song moves you in deep and profound ways. And we can also feel very connected to certain celebrities that we've seen or watched on movies that we really deeply resonated with the way they played those particular characters. And this is, of course, the level of connection that has been created by certain celebrities has also been a challenge for them, because figuring out how to essentially detach from those connections and sort of hold this field that the people can connect to, but that's not like taking over your personal psychic space every day all the time, is a big deal. And for a lot of celebrities, like, that is the work to be done, essentially, is learning how to essentially create an astral construct of yourself that can handle the collective energy without that energy interfering with your personal thinking and mind and space. And I've had to learn how to do that. I've had to learn how to create words, establish higher self interfaces for people to be able to contact me and engage with me. And that's just like practical magic at a higher level. Now, when we really get down to it, can I feel you right now? Can you feel me? And the answer is, yeah, you can. Like, we can. If we open up and we soften, we can feel each other. Mm-hmm. And we can transmit a lot. I mean, especially because we're on video, right? But also, even just with audio, just on the phone, you can feel connection with people. And we are missing one layer, majorly, which is our physiological connection and the signaling that occurs through direct organ vibration and a lot of the localized electromagnetic vibrational communion that goes on when we're in a shared physical space. And that stuff is very important. Yeah. There is information that we get from being in person with people that we do not get. Like, I cannot necessarily access as well with you right now than if we were in person. And so there is, great gifts that we can get from digital, non-local, online communication. And we can do a huge amount of exchange of consciousness and knowledge and feeling and experience. And being in person with people, we also get another set of information that so far we can't really transmit through these systems as well. Once we know somebody physically, or we've had a deep enough level of connection, some of that physical information, physiological information, we can transmit, because we actually are just connecting with them and their bodies, essentially. And our body and their body already knows some level of that information, and so is able to continue interpreting it and exchanging it through the field of entanglement that's between us. So if you already have that, it's richer. And you probably, people in your audience would understand what I'm talking about if you've ever been in a long distance relationship. Like you had a close time with the person, you've had sex, you've had deep physical intimacy, and now you're thousands of miles away from each other. But if you get yourselves into the right level of feeling each other, you can feel the same level, almost the same physical level of visceral connection and sexuality and energy and all of that you felt when you're separate. It's not quite as good, obviously, but it's a lot of information can still be exchanged in that way.
Feels like, as I'm hearing you talk about it, I'm just getting this information that it's kind of this magic safeguard that we want to have in place. This special thing that will compel us to physically come together. So it can't be fully transferred over a non-local or, a digital space. It just can't. There's a special protection, I feel, that comes with the physical presence. I love that. So now there's so many questions I have for you, and I know we're running out of time. So I want to go into one of your creations that you've co-created, which is the Guardian Alliance Academy. This is the personal development mastery courses that you have. I love the way you describe this program. So can you share that with people? Because I think this minute they hear it, they're going to be like, I need to be a part of this.
Yeah, sure. I mean, my students call it Jedi training school, and it really is. It's martial arts, metaphysics, sexuality and social studies, healing arts, ambassadorship and communication, and star walking, essentially learning how to, work with the planes of existence, understand the layers of consciousness. I'd been doing essentially these self-development trainings, which some of them got actually called Jedi training intensives for many, many years. And it got to the point where I even had a group on a LucasArts forum, essentially talking about like, hey, is this guy licensed, to do Jedi stuff, or what's going on here? And I had somebody pointed out to me, and I decided to not necessarily frame it that way anymore, because it was just like every time I did a class, I called it Guardians of Destiny from the beginning. And every time I did a class, everybody would be like, dude, did you do Adam's Jedi training? And there's somebody come to me like, do you do like Jedi training? And so it just caught on, and it never went away. I mean, even when I created this academy, Guardian Alliance, it's still considered the Jedi training school. So I've just used that on the side, and I'm like, okay, you're right. It's real life Jedi training, because you're essentially learning how to use the Force, and on all these levels of experience and existence.
Why is it Guardian Alliance? Explain why that was the name.
Yeah. So, the Guardians of Destiny, the original name for these workshops I started doing in 2004 or 5, something like that, was like an acronym for God. That was one thing, but also Guardians of Destiny. What is our destiny? Our destiny is whatever it is that's our sacred gift, our sacred purpose to give in the world. And what I realized is that within the context of planetary society and the sort of information wars and the nature of, battling for manipulation of consciousness, and the way that different people have, fallen down these rabbit holes and the way that the world is going, we need guardianship over sovereignty of mind and awareness and consciousness as much as anything else. And then I really, over the years, it became more and more clear that what we really need is guardianship over sovereignty itself. The reality that we are each divine, beautiful beings with sacred gifts, and that every person has different gifts, and that our ability to fulfill those gifts, fulfill our destiny, to do our sacred work in the world is in many ways based on how well we're able to actually preserve our freedom of connection with ourselves and who we really are and what's really true in our direct experience. And I recognized that for me and for a lot of my colleagues and friends who had kind of gone through the trenches and been through the shadows and worked through a lot of our stuff, and we realized that in that journey, we become capable as leaders of supporting others in rediscovering who they are, getting the old programs off of them that they're, going to be burned in hell forever, or that, this or that is good or bad or good or evil, or that, the earth is flat, because they heard it on, a YouTube video and they didn't understand perspective science and the nature of light and the way that the sun works and the way that the planet works and the way that travel in the southern hemisphere works, and all of that kind of stuff. And essentially that as guardians of this liberation of consciousness to rediscover what is true and what is real, we face the difficulty of the fact that you're coming up against people with different belief systems, different backgrounds, and different, sometimes deeply ingrained psychological trauma that's wrapped around those issues. And so how do we solve that problem? Well, we have to just learn how to ask the right questions, to start opening up people to looking at the way that they perceive and the way that they've believed, and actually questioning those beliefs, because you can't force somebody to change what they believe. But if you ask them the right questions, they can question what they believe. And when they question what they believe, they open the door to other possibilities being true, other things being real. Anybody who's been and seen Tony Robbins, he's really good at this. And the people he trains is really good at this. He gets you in and he shows you a table on the board. And he's like, these legs of this table are your belief systems. And you can be on that table and it could be super rickety, and dangerous. And the reality is, like, you're not on the ground. If you got to cut those legs off, get that table on the ground, and then you're stable. The ground is what is true, right? And our belief systems, in a way, separate us from the ground a lot of times. And so this is the work, is to get back to, the first principles, the most simple basis of experiencing our reality. And what's so amazing about it is that once you do that, the kinds of things that you get to experience are amazing, unbelievable even, right? Life-changing, because we don't realize it, but we've just been wearing certain kinds of glasses. We've been in certain lenses. We've been seeing things a certain way that we were taught, or that our parents taught us, or that school taught us. And suddenly you take off those shades and the world is magical. The world is beautiful and brilliant and amazing and inspiring. And so that's what the Guardian Alliance is about. It's about taking off the hood that's been forced over your head and starting to look at your gifts and your abilities and the things that you already know you've got, but you just didn't really quite get how powerful they are or how big they are. And, I created this academy back in 2013, 2014, mostly 2014. And so I'm a young guy in the videos and my friends are young, and we were just, figuring out a way to get this information out in the best way we can. But we all have, my co-founders all have their own academies now. Also, there's a whole network of information available through Guardian Alliance. And we have a new manager, and we've got new courses coming down the pipe, amazing alchemy course, written by Alexandria Astroeth, that's about to come out. And it's our goal is to eventually have enough of a library of these high level integrative mystery traditions from all over the world and all the different pathways, in one place, and eventually have physical schools where young people with extraordinary gifts, or extraordinary awakening processes that their parents can't understand, can go to actually learn and have the level of support they need to develop these skills and these gifts, and hopefully make that mainstream enough so that we can stop sending our kids and sending our family members into mental institutions because they're psychic, and really shift that pattern.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I'm going to hold that vision with you. That's beautiful. And I think that just seeing the youth today. They're, my team often jokes with me, my spiritual team often jokes with me about how we're like an old computer system, and there's always the new operating system coming out, and it's like our hardware might be of a certain generation, but we can always update the software. We can always get the latest operating program, but the ones being born now are born at that level of operation. Totally. And I love that you're already thinking about like, how can we support that? How can we, keep it as a strong foundation in who they are, so they don't have to forget themselves and then do this big journey of coming back that a lot of us have had to do in that process.
Yeah, exactly.
And I want to share with the audience, you also have a free gift that's connected to the Guardian Alliance Academy. Can you share really quickly what that is?
Yeah, sure. So we have an introductory course that essentially we call the initiation. And what it is it's it's a read. You want to read through it. There's a couple videos to kind of get to know a couple people in the Guardian Alliance and some of the coursework. But it really kind of takes you in deeper to this perspective on guardianship and what it actually means to be a guardian, and how these very fundamental principles and archetypes become powerful tools for us to develop superpowers in different parts of our being. And so the initiation course shows us, this is what's possible within, and this is what we're facing outside of us in the world. But there are solutions. And if we can do this work inside of ourselves and understand the areas where we can make an impact in the world, then we become really empowered to be great leaders. And it doesn't matter if you go any further with any teacher. I always say, take what's useful to you in any learning journey and integrate what is impactful and meaningful to you, and drop the rest. Because, sometimes you resonate with a certain teacher and sometimes you don't. And that's just how it flows. And that's a guidance system in our own body to teach us and bring us to information that's important to us. So hopefully this free gift we're sending out will be useful to some of you in exploring that initiation course. And we also have like super cheap memberships where you can pay, I think it's $11 a month right now, and you get access to all of the Mastery Ring 1 courses, which is a whole deep dive into each of the major superpower areas and in your capacities in them, and lots of practical trainings throughout each of the courses. So
that's incredible.
Yeah. So anyway, it's fun.
$11. I mean, that's, you guys, that's a steal right there. But
yeah, I mean, we basically are just giving away everything we can on there as much as possible. So
that's great. I mean, to give us the tools, help us armed so that we can start standing in our power as the solution. And but before we end this, I just want to ask you, if you could teach just one concept to the world before you leave here, what would it be? I know, the big one.
All right, I have one to leave you guys with.
Okay.
So, a lot of people essentially say you got to get grounded, right? And we always, we don't really know what that means. Most of the time, we think that means, getting outside or go for a walk, or it means like eating some food so our blood sugar balances. But getting grounded is actually a much, much bigger and more profound thing than that. And what it's actually about is about current. So if you have a house, you know that if there's a short in the house's electrical system, it's usually because there's a problem with the ground. If you plug in something and it's not grounded enough, it'll spark, it'll short, things will, go crazy. And the bigger the ground, in other words, the pole that actually goes into the earth that has, the ground line running to your electrical system, the more grounded that is, the more electricity your house can actually handle and process, which is pretty fascinating, right?
Yeah.
Now, how are you plugged in to ground? Well, in your body, it's actually through space-time, through the structure of space-time. And space-time, as we know, curves around planets, right? And Einstein taught us that curvature of space-time and the flow of space-time is gravity. And gravity and curvature of space-time are synonymous. That's what keeps us on a planet. It's the curvature of space-time around the sphere that is the Earth. And because the Earth is a sphere, this aggregated molecular structure and mass structure that is essentially, been woven together through, circulation around its own central singularity or its own little whirlpool in space-time. That whirlpool at the center, that core point that all that space-time is curving to, is the heart of the Earth. It's the very center. It's the core of the planet. And that core of the planet is the most like super dense material that in the entire planet. It's essentially like an iron crystal and some probably higher elements as well, but it's like a crystalline structure of white hot iron, that's going around this like central, essentially singularity of protons that are in total coherence and synergy at the center of the Earth. And so this gravitational center is what your arm is pulled to when you drop your hand. It is what your body's pulled to when you relax. And so that gravitational pull, that is what grounding actually is. It's letting gravity and your feeling and experience of gravity actually help your shoulders to hang and your stomach to hang and your body to hang and feel this connection to the Earth. And you learn this in Tai Chi and Qigong and other things where you like let your arms hang and you stretch your fingers towards the Earth, because you can literally start to feel the energetic current moving through your system as you do that. But it goes deeper than that. And I'll only take a couple more minutes here and I've got to jump as well. But the core of the Earth is intrinsically connected to the moon and the orbit of the moon. And so the moon massages gravitationally the core of the Earth, causing this rotational energy within the outer core and the mantle, causing electromagnetic spiraling and et cetera, which partially generates the whole field around the planet. So the moon is like this balancing, you can think of it like a belly dancer orbiting around the ground current, helping modulate the electromagnetic field. And then that center, the Earth Moon's center collectively, is grounded in the core of the sun, the center of the sun. And that is, solar plexus, so to speak. And we're literally going through the chakras: root chakra, core of the Earth; lunar chakra, core of the Earth Moon system. That's the sacral chakra. Solar plexus, core of the sun. And then what's the sun connected to? Well, it grounds through the center of the galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy. So the center of the galaxy is like the center of our heart that connects us to all the stars, all the people, all the beings are all different stars, and we're unifying through love, right, to singularity. And the heart of the galaxy is grounded through the heart of the Laniakea galactic cluster, a gravitational shared center of many, many, many galaxies together, communicating with each other, sharing with each other, expressing their gifts to each other, as galaxies can do, at this macro scale. And then where is that grounded? Well, all we can say is that the Laniakea cluster is connected gravitationally to the structure of the rest of the gravitational clusters of all of the other galaxies all over essentially the universe. And so where is the center of the universe? Is there a center, or is the center of the universe distributed to all the places along the universe? It's almost like it doesn't matter, because every proton, in a sense, is like the center of the universe. And so that's like the third eye grounding, the realization that every place is the center of everything. That is where it's all grounding to. It's everywhere. And then you realize, well, what's the universe grounded into? And that's the mystery. That's the crown. That's the opening. And so how do you get there? By relaxing. You literally just relax And the relaxation in your body connects you to this ley line, this pole, this current, this Jed, this central pillar of your being. And Jed being the Egyptian word for the central pillar connecting the layers of existence, and partially the source, possibly exactly what Lucas meant when he said Jedi. And that pillar being connecting to the heart of the earth, moon, sun, galaxy, galactic cluster, universe, infinite mystery. Through grounding, through going straight down, you get to the divine. So just relax.
Just relax. I love that, man. I want to just take that last piece and like play it over and over again till I can just feel it through each of the centers. That was beautiful watching that, like visually. I love that piece. So just relax, everyone. Like ultimately you're connected to it all. And it's through that beautiful grounding and relaxation that Adam just shared with us that you can really truly know it and feel it. Adam, this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for all the time that you've given us today. It's been beautiful. And to those who are watching, yeah, please click the link below. Go check out the introductory videos, the initiation for the Guardian Alliance Academy. I'll see you over there. I'm going to be in there too. And with that, I just want to say, I hope that this conversation has been illuminating for you. And I will see you at the next episode of the New Earth Leadership Summit. Until then, stay magical.
Thank you. Aloha.